Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Roadhouse 2024. So, we can't hide the fact that this movie is technically a remake, but in all honesty, between the Patrick Swayze film and this movie, I would have to go on and say that there are little pieces that do feel like the original, but it doesn't feel the exact same. Really, they're like two different films, really, if you kind of take certain little pieces out of the film. Uh, to me, how I'm going to possibly need to be forced to approach this review is firstly, I'm going to give you my grading, which this movie was great. It was really entertaining. Uh, Better than a lot of other new release films that I've seen that have come out this year, for sure. Why didn't this movie go on and really be a theater release and do well? Because really it should have. Because really it was a lot of fun to watch. And so now I'm gonna go on and I feel like I need to compare the Patrick Swayze film and Jake Gyllenhaal film, and then eventually give you my thoughts and whatever about the film, and then we'll go into spoilers, full on spoilers, and I'll kind of talk scene for scene whatever I can remember within my brain, because the only thing that'll be on my phone today will just be the cast list. So that way I can go on and kind of have to just remember the film instead of remember who everyone's name is in this film, besides Dalton, who of course is the Jake Gyllenhaal Patrick Swayze slash character. So really, so for the Patrick Swayze film, we go on and we have Dalton's character who kind of goes into the bar and he owns the bar. He hires and fires people, and he really goes on and is really watching everything. He's in every bit of piece of that bar and so on and so forth. To the point of seeing certain guys who are kind of taking money from the till and all that jazz. Really, in this newer film, we just have Jake Gyllenhaal's Dalton just kind of be the bouncer of this bar. He's not looking into every single thing of this bar and micromanaging every single thing. He's not hiring and firing people. He really is to simply be a bouncer. And there's honestly certain parts of the film where I don't feel that the bar is busy enough to justify having Jake come in here and be this bouncer character. But that's not a knock on this film. It's just okay, they're trying to tell more story than just give you just constant bar fights. We do still get a montage going on of the kind of other bouncers getting better at what Jake Gyllenhaal is training them on what to do. And we do, of course, get a much better, I think, backstory of Jake Gyllenhaal's Dalton in this film than I feel that we do in the other Patrick Swayze Roadhouse film. We just do. It really sets up more that Jake Gyllenhaal's Dalton is to be this kind of UFC fighter, and we also go on and assess that this person is not just this bouncer that is just better than all the others that this owner hires. No, this guy is just some bare knuckle fighter that it seems okay, this guy can really handle himself. Let's hire this guy. That's what this kind of version is much more presented as. Uh for the Patrick Swayze version, I think there are parts of the story that I feel is better. The ending is better. I feel then in the Patrick Swayze movie, we have like the people in the town kind of crying out for this champion. It's like, please help me. Like this guy is uh, burning my store and this and that, and please help me. Where as kind of Jake Gyllenhaal's character is this person with a an endless amount of like anger once you get him going. He's like a juggernaut or a Hulk. Like, don't get him angry because man, when you get him angry, like he will just uh do anything in his power to just burn down a whole town if that's what he needs to do. And so on and so forth. Like he will murder everybody in his wake if that's what he needs to do. And it kind of does set up a little bit that this Jake Gyllenhaal character really has a darker side, it seems. Um, Especially in the early parts of this film. So I have to go on and say that, yeah, I really did enjoy this film. We do, at certain points in time, have Jake Gyllenhaal coming off as like the Tom Cruise Jack Reacher character, especially when we have Jake who, like, they show this in the trailer, so I can talk about this a little bit. We have Jake who kind of brings all these guys out from this bar. He kind of tricks them and figures out a way to get them all out there. And then he's like, he's kind of presenting the scene of like, well, hey, you asked for this. And he's asking like how far the hospital is away from the bar and so on and so forth, because really he's looking at all five of these guys and he's just like, well, like you're just gonna need more men. Pa 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 pa. And like that is of course a really clever and interesting action sequence and so on and so forth. We have, of course, uh Jake Gyllenhaal, who does go on and fall in love with a doctor, like in the original Patrick Swayze film. Uh, but I feel that we also kind of get rid of a character from the original Patrick Swayze film, also. Like, there is a Sam Elliott character that is to have come in and kind of be like the brother or the father piece to this movie in the original, and we don't have this in this film. But so here are kind of the little kind of problems that I have with this film. Firstly, in all honesty, like Conor McGregor comes in here as a very weird villain. He comes off as a very like old school like video game villain where he's like coming in there and he's like walking in here everywhere like this, and it's weird looking, and it's like, besides his little like kind of joking things that he does, like no disrespect to of course Conor McGregor and what he was doing in this film, like it just comes off very weird. And like it also like Conor McGregor is a very like threatening looking guy in this film. Like he doesn't need to like come in here like this and like, I'm gonna get you. Like kind of like it just looks goofy. um on also the villain side of things, I feel like there is too many villains in this film. Like it feels like the villains are kind of just like kind of tripping over one another, either literally or figuratively in this film. Uh, Really just didn't really seem like they knew like on the villain side like where they were going for this movie. Besides trying to feel like the original in some pieces, because obviously like McGregor's character does feel like a villain from the original. We do have, I think, like the Brent character that feels like the original other character, uh, who is the rich guy in the other film. Because there always just has to be this rich guy, villainous person. But yeah, so besides us kind of questioning whether Jake Gyllenhaal like really needs to be in this bar as this bouncer, it's like that's the only real criticisms that I have. Um, there is a whole like good kind of piece of this film where Jake Gyllenhaal is having to go on the Googles and the internets and try to figure out like what's like important about the Roadhouse bar, like why is this Brent guy wanting the Roadhouse so badly? And really, we could actually spend some time in this movie really just having the actors or actresses or whoever come to Jake and just be like, yeah, he's after my bar because he wants my land. Like, we really could have just had that moment instead of Jake going on the computer and I gotta figure out why. I gotta know. Why did he need to do that whatsoever? That was a waste of my time. Because we really could have had any number of these. Like, we have the doctor who goes on to explain who Big D is, uh, who I'll just call him Big D when we get into spoilers. Like, we have, like, the bar owner finally going on and kind of telling uh, who Brent is, because it seems when Jake kind of goes to the bar owner, like the bar owner is kind of reluctant and whatever. But yeah, like those are the only real problems that I have in this film. But I really feel like those are kind of very like small meat and potatoes. It doesn't really hugely affect the movie, uh, but like it does kind of bother me a little bit. So with that said, that's just kind of how I felt about the film. It was entertaining. It was great. It was fun action. Uh, really, I was kind of consistently going on to the film of like I hope this kind of escalates, and then when it does, I'm like, yeah, cool. Like it isn't just like this flat scene that just kind of doesn't really go enough of anywhere. No, like it really does escalate somewhere. I'm like, okay, cool, like great. Um, we really have I think where Jake ends up being in this movie, I think is possibly maybe not as good as the Patrick Swayze being on the farm kind of thing. But like I think it just kind of fits the setting. Or I think the this one just kind of fits the setting of him just being where he ends up being in this film, which of course I'll talk more about it when we get into actual spoilers. Hopefully, I'll remember those bits and pieces. So, anyways, with that said, I think I've talked about this long enough. I enjoyed it. I thoroughly did. Check it out on Amazon Prime, unless you want to go on and check it out on other apps that I've used for a very long time. Uh, you can go on and check out Roadhouse on an app called Coma, Coma. I've been using this for about a couple of weeks now, and it seems to be able to play a plethora of different films and so on and so forth, shows and whichever and what have you. You can find a lot of other rare stuff in there to just kind of check out. But then also, I've used another app for a long stretch of time called Zelifonic, Zelivonic. You can also check that out. And it is kind of interesting because a lot more recently I've kind of seen ads for that app. So I'm like, okay, how long is this going to last? But other than that, yeah. I'm going to go on and pause it here and then we'll get into full on spoilers. I'll put out my cast list and then I'll go into the much more deep, dark spoilers and kind of talk about how I felt about this film within the scenes of the film. Good, this movie actually has a cast list and it's not bartender guy or knife guy or or Brendan Scoons or and whatever what have you. So, firstly, this movie opens in a uh, kind of very ugly looking bar, and or we have this kind of fighting scenario where we end up having Post Malone, who ends up playing Carter Ford in the beginning of this, where he is kind of taking on all challengers. It's kind of like the very first Wolverine X-Men movie, where Wolverine goes on and is fighting one of the guys in the cage, and it's like, well, hey, don't hit him in the nuts, and he'll take this personal. So, but of course, like, we just kind of have this like quasi kind of ring setup, but it's not much of a ring. It's just kind of like a floor and kind of this crowd surrounding these guys. So Carter Ford is this champion. He's beating everybody. He's like, yeah, all right. And then we, of course, like, we should have actually had Dalton like come into like some Eminem music right here, because man, did he look like Eminem. Uh, Dalton comes in and he has this hoodie on, and he's like coming out of this like crappy looking car, which we kind of do away with the car. Like, if you remember the Patrick Swayze movie, he has that really nice car that he kind of puts in this storage, and then he has this other beat up car because he knows that he's gonna get like a stop sign getting thrown through the car and whatever and have you, and Patrick Swayze's pulling it out of the car, and he's like, well, I gotta get this fixed. Jake for most of this film is just kind of like walking around, and if anything, there's actually like a whole like kind of scene where Jake is kind of just walking home and this like car is chasing after him. It's awesome. It's cool. Like, I don't know what all of that was like CGI did not, but it looked pretty good. Looked pretty good to me. So back at this kind of fighting arena scenario. So we, of course, have this champion, Post Malone, who, of course, everybody has gone on to recently see him in the WWE 2K4 commercials, because he's also in that for some reason. Because he's going to be a DLC. For what reason? I don't know why. He's never wrestled in WWE before, but okay. Whatever. Sour grapes. So, we come to have Dalton coming in this hoodie, and he comes into this place, and so all Dalton needs to go on and do is to take off his hoodie and show his chest full of scars and all of that, and we immediately have Post Malone that's like, oh, no, I'm not fighting this guy, no, not gonna happen. So he's telling all like the fight promoters staff off, and he's like, "No, I'm leaving. I'm out of. I'm out of 5,000." So I'm not saying word for word here, but it's how it throws down. So just because of the look of this guy, nobody wants a piece of that. Nobody wants a piece of that Dalton, and they might not even know like who Dalton actually is. They may, who knows, word might get around in the fight scene. Or maybe they have gone on and seen USC and know who this guy is and knew that he murdered his supposed friend. Like, they kind of briefly set that up in this movie where, like, hey, when you get this guy mad, like, man, does he get angry. So, Hulk style. Just, I can't let go. I can't stop. I just gotta keep punching. So Dalton, of course, is to now just be handed this money. He's like, okay, like, I didn't do anything. I'm outie. And so he starts leaving, going back to his crappy car. And we all of a sudden have this guy who's like, hey, man, I lost $500 because of you. And so Dalton is just like, hey, you want a piece of me, 50 Cent? You want a piece? Man, like, if only any of these lines would have been in any of this film, it would have been funny. But of course, this is to be a movie that is taken seriously, even though I'm joking about it. So Dalton is turning, like, assuming that there is going to be a fight that is going to be breaking out between the two of them. And all that really happens is this guy comes to him and is like, hey, where's my $500? and he stabs this Dalton within the ribs. He just stabs him in the chest, and like Dalton doesn't react at all. And the guy's like, "Oh, I messed with the wrong guy." Yeah, you mess with Dalton. You don't know who Dalton is? Didn't you see the other Patrick Swayze film? Know who Dalton is? He's not to be taken lightly. So, whereas we go on and see Dalton Patrick Swayze in the other movie, he just goes on and he just kind of just sews his own knife wounds and like probably puts like gunpowder, and then he like lights his hand and it's like like Rambo did in the first Blood movie. Because who knows what kind of home remedy that this guy has for all of his wounds. This guy just goes on and he kind of just takes care of his own wound, and like this guy just runs off. But like, so this guy has the knife just stuck in his rib, and he's just walking around just happy-go-lucky. And we have Frankie. Frankie is to be the owner of the Roadhouse bar, the bar that is in so much chaos that nobody really bothers to even visit there. It seems enough. So Frankie had come to this bar looking for some other guy, but immediately when she saw Dalton, she's like, I gotta have me some of that. Like, I gotta have me some of that Jake Gyllenhaal. It seems like that's the guy that scares people away. So I just gotta, yeah. I want me some of that Gyllenhaal for some reason. I gotta get me some of that Dalton. So Frankie goes on after the whole knife incident. She's like, yeah, I really gotta find who this guy is. And so she follows him and is like, well, hey, hey, like I was looking for some other guy in there, but hey, it seems like you're a much better prospect. It seems like you're a free agent. Like, what are you asking for a year? Like, what's your 401k looking like? And so we have Dalton that's like, yeah, you don't want to work with me. Like, no, like I have no interest. And we have Frankie who's like, well, hey, like just give me your phone number. Like we can kind of let's trade some phone numbers, and you could call me and when you're really interested and we have Dalton who's like, well, I don't even have a phone. It's like, man, this guy has to be set up as like mysterious. Like this guy really has to be set up as like a real, like legitimate drifter. And that's the thing that I really like about this film is like, he's just kind of this reluctant guy who's just like, oh, okay, I'll I'll do this. Like, why not? Like, I have nothing left to lose. And honestly, like the whole drifter idea, I miss that about films. I really do. So much about this really sets up Jake Gyllenhaal being in this kind of Western kind of film, and they even kind of talk about that in one of the books and one of the stories in this part of the film about like, yeah, like you're like the Clint Eastwood Pale Rider coming in to save the day, and Dalton's just like, okay, yeah, I'm just a guy that's I'm just a dude who just wants a book and wants the internet and all the other things that I'm going to ask for in this movie from this bookstore once I get here in town. So here's where we kind of take a dark turn, because we have Dalton who's just like, nah, Frankie, go away. Like I want nothing to do with you. And so we find out that yeah, early part in this film, Dalton does have a car. And it's a shit box. It's a crap box car. So he goes in this car, and he's driving, seeing the phone number on his dashboard or on his on his front of the car, and he's driving. Horrible pantomime as I'm doing. And we have him just stop as the train is just coming along, and he's just kind of looking at it, and he's just like, that looks like a train. I'm probably gonna get killed here. Like, do I want to die today? And here's where it kind of gets like kind of dark in the film. And we have Dalton who's just kind of looking at this train coming at him full speed, and the train is like, he's like, hey man, like, you're gonna die. And Dalton's just like, man, maybe not today. Like, maybe later. Maybe someone will go on and murder me. So Jake starts to like kind of like put on the keys of the car and realizes that the car isn't exactly wanting to start. And so he's like, well, maybe I am going to die. Maybe it's going to happen. Maybe today is the day. And Jake gets this car started just enough to where like the train just kind of clips the car and the car swerves, and Jake is looking at this, or Dalton is looking at this as a second chance. He's like, all right, like maybe it wasn't my day after all, and like maybe I should do something with the now time I have allotted. And immediately he looks on this at this phone number, and he's like, yeah, that's gotta be my sign. That's gotta be like somebody up there telling me to just like, hey, you should be doing some of this. You should be with that bar that is just bizarrely called the Roadhouse. Even though it's a Roadhouse bar, like it's just called the Roadhouse. Because we come to find that Frankie's father or whoever like would go on to just kind of name things, and it would just be him lazily naming things. Like eventually Dalton will find out that Frankie has a boat, and the boat is really just called the Boat. And it's like, wow, that's some creativity there. But it's creativity in a fun way. It's a funny way. So Dalton is to go on, and he's to have, for somehow or another, a bus ticket to, I guess, from all the prize winnings, to make it to this bar of the Roadhouse. And he meets a bookstore girl along the way who is to be Charlie. So the way in which that the two of them meet together is Charlie goes on and gives Dalton the book about this, like, Freddy the Tree. Like, did you bother to see this one tree? And Dalton's like, no, because I didn't really give a crap about this one tree. So Charlie's talking Dalton up about this tree and how historically it's just this unique tree that no one probably really gives a crap about, but I guess this girl really does, and has this whole book about it, and is like, here you go, here's book, read it. So Dalton, instead of just being completely annoyed by this girl, like, well, hey, where's the Roadhouse? Like, I'm just going there. I don't give a crap about your books. Instead, like, Dalton just kind of takes a liking to this girl. It's like, you know what? I'm going to give you some more lines in this film. I'm going to give you some more things to do in this movie. Because I just bizarrely just like you and your dad for some reason, who your dad kind of like could not care less about anything going on in this film, but he's just there. And sometimes he's just disappeared because he's off doing some other job that we have Charlie kind of mention in this film. Like, oh, he has another job. And so we have kind of Charlie kind of defending her part of like strip mall or whatever with this like aluminum baseball bat, and she's like, yeah, with all the villains or all the goons of Brent, the rich villain in this movie, who comes in and is like, well, hey, like I want to get people all out of this town so I can build this huge big thing that probably no one will go to, Because how really freaking big is this town? I don't think it's big at all. I don't really see the desperation of why Brendan needs to go on and build this huge thing that he has this model of. It doesn't make sense. This town is completely a waste town. It doesn't feel like there's enough people to justify like this big huge whatever model thing that he's going to go on and build. Like, is it going to be a movie theater or what is it going to be? I don't know. They never exactly say like what Brendan is really building, what his big huge whatever plan is, or maybe I didn't bother to hear it while watching this film because I'm like, he just has money to just blow in this big building thing that doesn't make sense. So we have Dalton that is to go on and ask both Charlie and her father about like, well, hey, like, where is the roadhouse? Like, it's really hard to find, and like, what's the name of it? And it's like, oh no, it's just called the Roadhouse. And he's like, oh well, like I should have just looked that up on GPS. Like, man, if I would have just put in the Roadhouse, like, man, I'm sure I would have just found out that right away. So Dalton goes on to this location and then realizes it's just called the Roadhouse. And so it's like, wow, like, all right, like, I'm here now. Dalton, of course, comes in there, and I think we have Dalton just kind of feeling out this bar, just kind of really trying to understand, like, why he needs to even bother being there, especially when he comes in there, like, initially. And all right, so we get Dalton to kind of go through this bar, and he realizes, like, okay, like, when at some point people do get rowdy, we do have this one bouncer who is Billy, who kind of isn't probably as experienced at being a bouncer. And so Dalton is really to just kind of come in and kind of give him pointers about, like, hey man, like, I know he has a knife, or like, hey man, lift with your knees, or hey man, like, you got a boogie. So, because Dalton, when going into this bar, immediately realizes, like, you know what, I want to be the bouncer here. Like I feel like there's some knowledge, or there's something that I can give, uh, and I can really like help out this bar. And really, the character that I liked in this movie was actually BK Cannon, the girl who plays the kind of the bartender Laura. I really liked this character, and she kind of is this character that they like have her come into Dalton and give him breakfast, and like they kind of you kind of see this character kind of every once in a while have some kind of lines of dialogue, and it's like, okay, like I really liked this character, and I feel like I get to see her more than I do actually do the owner of this film, because Frankie is to be kind of like the other owner was, where he's just kind of like in this box seat kind of a thing, just kind of watching on and just kind of like, like, Dalton's doing good, yeah. Or like he like the other owner in the Patrick Swayze film, I remember when they had like that big fight, and then he just turns to Patrick Swayze and he's like, and Patrick Swayze's like, yeah, like, we did some good here. We beat up some people, it was great. So uh so we have Dalton that after like the first day of him just kind of watching and kind of watching things, he goes to Frankie, is like, okay, uh like, yeah, like, this all sounds great and everything like that, the like the $20,000 that I think that she was going to give him to pay him. And Dalton's like, well, yeah, that's great and all, but like, I need a place to stay, like I got nothing. And they talk about this boat, and Dalton's like, sounds good enough. We also have Frankie who's telling Dalton, it's like, well, yeah, but you gotta kind of be leery about this boat, because like you probably want to sleep with a snorkel. Like, there's probably an alligator that'll kill you in there. It's basically Miami Vice. It's basically, they kind of set it up like Miami Vice, and Dalton was technically uh, the the Don Johnson character in Miami Vice. So like we didn't really, I don't think we really got like the Don Johnson Miami Vice and the other Miami Vice movies. So we're technically getting it here. So we have Dalton, who is in leery fear of them being an alligator that might kill him at any moment. Because at some point, some dog was previously killed in that boat, for whatever goofy story reasons, to eventually have Dalton relate to some other guy, about some situation that Dalton will be thrusted on. So, so Dalton's within this boat. He ends up getting awoken by Lori, and she brings him breakfast, and is kind of giving him like certain uh like story things about this town and so on and so forth. And we have Dalton that starts to go through the town, and bizarrely everybody knows his name. It's like it's Cheers all over again. So Dalton's going throughout the town. It's like, hey Dalton, and Dalton's like, what? Like, who the are you? Who are you? How does everybody know my name? At some point, Dalton goes and talks to Frankie. He's like, how does everybody know who I am here? And Frankie's like, well, it's a small town. Like, it's a gossip town. And so, like, you're the new guy in town, and probably everybody's looking at you up and down and be like, you're a nice slice of pie. And so everybody is looking at this new guy in town, and just being like, yeah, like, hopefully he's our new hero that'll save the day. So we have Dalton. He comes into this bar, and here's where we get the montage of Dalton at some point coming and training Billy at first to kind of lift with his knees to kind of shove everybody out. And we have him eventually hiring Reith, and who's this kind of surfer guy that Jake Gyllenhaal sees that he has kind of bloody knuckles. It's like, well, hey, like, you used to be a boxer. Yeah, I was. Okay, well, you're hired. So, but kind of before all the montaging and all of that jazz happens, the first time that Dalton does some heavy lifting within this bar is when Dalton is to see this kind of motorcycle gang come in. I say gang, but it doesn't look like they're all like wearing. They're all wearing like leather, and they have like Hell's Angels in the back of their backs. No, it's not all like that. So, but they're all wielding motorcycles on their way here. So Dalton goes on and sees that there's this guy who obviously wants to start something. He's breaking pull cues over his leg, like he has a metal leg upon his leg. So leg. So Dalton is to go on and just be like, okay, like I wanna just mess with these guys. I wanna figure out a way, with all the experience of which that I have, like how I can get these people out of the bar and how I can beat them all up. So Dalton goes on and is just like, well, hey, like, can we go outside? And we of course have one of the Brend. I'm gonna go on and call the big evil doer guy Ben, because that's his actual name within the IMDb. So I'll call him Ben because I feel like I'm gonna consistently mispronounce the last name of this villainous character, and there's certain times where people just get really ticked that I mispronounce something. My apologies. It wasn't meant to be, but I feel like I'm gonna consistently butcher this guy's last name. Kind of like Conor McGregor. I probably will just call him Conor McGregor in this film, even though his actual name is Knox. Knock knock. Who's there? Not Conor McGregor. So, Whatever. So Dalton goes on. It's like, well, hey, like, are your guys' motorcycles outside? And it's like, hey, he's gonna touch our motorcycles. He's gonna fart all over them. We gotta go out there and just see what he wants with our motorcycles. So Dalton goes out there and the guys follow. And so then he lets the guys circle around him. And he's just like, okay, like, how far is the hospital away from here? It's like, you guys got insurance, right? Medical, dental, all the yin yang. Like, do you have a platinum or gold? Like, I know a good insurance guy. Like, all you have to call is 1-800 blah blah blah. So we have like these guys that are just like, dude, we have the numbers on you. And Dalton's just like, man, you really don't. So we have Dalton that kind of slaps the first guy. And he is just, at first, Dalton just slaps Dell. And then he goes on to just kind of slap all the other guys. Just, but then he eventually starts like punching and kicking. And I'm like, all right, he's beating the crap out of these other guys because they keep wanting some. And we have this guy, Mo, who's kind of this bad guy goon, but he's giving comic relief because he's kind of like, I guess, the weaker out of all the other groups. So weirdly enough, this Mo character, like almost kind of bizarrely, even though he's on the villain side, he kind of becomes friends with Dalton. He's consistent like, oh, hey, hi, Dalton, as he's going on and beating somebody up, which I thought was actually kind of funny. In the other Patrick Swayze movie, we kind of have the one kind of like overalled kind of trucker hat one villain guy who's kind of there for the comic relief once he gets like the polar bear like dropped on him. It's like, there's a bear that fell on me. And all that jazz. Yeah, we kind of have one of those kind of goons in here who's kind of designated as Mo. He's kind of like the comic relief villain character. But you end up kind of liking him forcibly. And then when he kind of turns to just be like, well, hey, man, like, you can go after all those other guys. Like, I'm just gonna, like, I'm not gonna do anything about it. Like, I'm just gonna leave. Like, these guys are weird anyways. So, and Mo in the beginning of this ends up getting his arm broken. It's like, hey, you broke my arm. It's like, yeah, like, you guys were beating me up. So, like, 5 against 1. So, Dalton goes on and slaps all these guys around, just slaps them silly. And then we have all these guys that are just lying on the ground, and Dalton's like, I just beat all you guys up. This is great. So, and he Jack Reachers them all and just kind of like, you asked for this. Make my day. So now we realize there's a bunch of guys on the ground, and now Dalton's like, well, hey, we should send all these guys to the hospital. It's the right thing to do. And we have Frankie who's like, dude, I'm not going to send them to the hospital. They're outside my bar. Like, they can lick their wounds. And one of the guys is like, well, hey, my arm is broken. I can't drive my motorcycle to the hospital. And so now Dalton has to go on and find some car that he can bring all these guys to the hospital with. He's just like, hey, how's it going? Like, that nose still broken? How's that arm feeling? So they drive all the way to this hospital, and here's where we finally get to see this Dr. Ellie character. I'm not sure if every single one of these names are the exact same as the original because I didn't go on and see the Patrick Swayze film yesterday. I saw it a number of months ago, so here's where we are. So Dalton goes on to bring all these guys in, and he's signing paperwork, and the nurse is just like, excuse me, are they friends of yours? And Dalton's just like, oh no, I just beat them all up. I just decided to just do the right thing and bring him into this hospital. And then this doctor, I don't know exactly what kind of qualifications Ellie has in this film, but she's a person who can stitch up people nonetheless. So Ellie goes on and confronts Dalton. It's like, well, hey, thanks for bringing all those guys to this hospital. Now you have to go on and make everybody busy because you decided to just break a couple arms and punch people in the nose. Like, thanks for that. And Jake Gyllenhaal's like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, but can I get your digits? Can I get me some of that? Can I get me some of that? Because bizarrely, like, I think Ellie just kind of like, she attacks Dalton in this way, but then it's like she, I think, just wanted to say all this just to get with Dalton's character, possibly not realizing that Dalton was just going to be uh this this guy who is gonna like be like a jerk back to her or whatever, and instead he's just like, well, like, oh well, like they're like, I tried to do the right thing, like, hey man, like, you can't, you're attacking the messenger here, like, it's not my fault that I had to beat up all 5 of these guys and all at once by myself, and now you're giving me crap. So Ellie just is to like the fact that just Dalton doesn't give an F, and then she's like, I gotta spend more time with this guy. I gotta steal my ex boyfriend's boat, and we gotta have this this kind of just sitting out in the sun talk with one another, to where I can find a little bit more about this guy, because Dalton goes on, and when he's at the boat and he's sleeping there, he's getting these weird UFC dreams about him fighting in the UFC, and we're like, okay, what all does this mean? And it doesn't really help us understand it all until later, where we go on and we have Ben, who comes in on Dalton. It's like, well, hey, yeah, like, it was taken down, but yeah, I saw this YouTube video of you fighting in the UFC against your friend of all people, and you just beat the crap out of him. You just kept on just punching away. You couldn't stop, and they had to like haul you away from this guy. It's like, man, did you just do enough to just kill this dude? So telling us like when Dalton is pushed like too far, like he's unstoppable, like he's a juggernaut, he can't be stopped, he's an unstoppable man. So we have Dalton with spending some time with Ellie, just kind of getting some dinner, some sandwiches, and whichever, and and some and having some food and whichever, and also Dalton trying the Cuban coffee that eventually he likes at the bar. And so here's where we start to go on to the Dalton having the montage moment where he's like teaching all these kids like how to be better kids, not really kids, teaching these other bouncers how to be better at their jobs, all while like Billy's relaying all this to Reef, who is the other new bouncer. So the further along we go into this story, Dalton is to become this threat now, that these guys can't go on and just get away with anything in this bar to kind of scare them off. So we go further to have kind of Mo and Dell relay this to Ben. It's like, well, hey, this new guy, this drifter came in, and like now, like we can't do what we were doing before. Like, this is all for naught. Man, does this suck? And Ben is just like, huh? Ben is like, no, I'm gonna get my I'm gonna get my face shaved while this boat is rocking horribly, and while he's consistently getting like sliced and diced by this razor, but he's just like, no, 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 I want my face shaved while this boat is horrifically rocking, to the point where he punches the captain of this boat. And so, because Ben is just this guy who is just this stubborn man who, and that kind of sets up well that this is this stubborn man who's just like, no, I'm gonna have this boat rocking and I'm gonna get this shave. So Ben is to realize, like, well, hey, like, if I don't do something, my dad is gonna come a calling. And of course he does. And when Ben like sees that his phone and his dad is on the phone, it's like, well, I'm just gonna take my phone and just, and he chucks his phone. And he goes on and tells one of the schmucks, one of his goons, like, hey, get my phone for me. When we have one of the villains who ends up coming with a broken hand because of Dalton, of course. Because at some point, Dalton is going to have a meet and greet with Ben, and he's kind of in this forced meet and greet because we come to have Ben's goons coming for him. But we'll get to that here in a little bit. So we of course have Dalton, and he is realizing that these goons are consistently coming. He's trying to figure out why the Roadhouse is so valuable, and is to spend so much time with Charlie on the internet, like figuring out, like, well, hey, like, it seems like there's no like boat deliveries coming to this bar. It like, where exact, like, where's the value coming to this bar? He's trying to figure it out because no one is going on and telling him. Every time he asks certain people of the town, like, they don't know. So we have Dalton that ends up getting arrested, and it's some Trump charge, and that of course has him meet up with Big D. After, we have Ellie and Dalton who are kind of on the beach and they're talking together and they're kissing because Ellie really likes Dalton and is to realize how damaged this guy is and how mysterious she is to him, just makes him more attractive. And Dalton is kind of pushing her away. It's like, no, like, you don't want any of this. Because, man, when I get angry, you won't like me when I'm angry. So Ellie is to go on and tell Dalton who Big D is. It's like, well, hey, he's my father. And like, he's rich like Ben is, and they're working together, and like and so it seems that Ellie's father, Big D, owns all the cops in this town. And so Dalton goes on to be arrested by Big D. And so Big D is kind of in front of this car, and he's consistently turning to Jake and Dalton, and he's telling him, it's like, well, hey, like, you better get out of this town or I'm gonna get you arrested. And Dalton's like, arrested for what? And he's like, whatever. like the paperwork will get lost, and like, so you better get out of this town. And Dalton, like, with this guy forcing him out of this town, like, that just makes Dalton even more interested to stay even longer in this town. He's like, no, 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 like, I want to continue to just be here. Like, I'm just loving the town. Like, I just love this bookstore, like, that I just found over here, this little nook. Like, I'm just enjoying my time. like, this Roadhouse thing, wow, like, it's really fun. Like, you should come on down to the Roadhouse. You'll enjoy your time there. So Dalton is to just ignore Big D. So we have Dalton, who comes back to his boat with seemingly no alligator present yet. And Dalton comes to find that there is one of Ben's goons, Dell, who has this shotgun, and he's ready to just kill Dalton and make it look like an accident because, or make it look like a theft or something, because he tried to go on and run him down with this truck, and that didn't work. And both Dell and his girlfriend had to run out of the truck, and Jake falls off this bridge because the guy takes the truck and he just smashes through the bridge, having Jake fall into the water, but magically Jake is unharmed. So Jake comes all the way back to his boat, soaking wet, just be like, I hate this town, but I just wanna punch everybody. This is just, you push too far, you push the wrong man. So Dalton goes on to see Dell, and he has his shotgun in the boat, and he's just like, yeah, like, I try to make this look like an accident, but like, either way, you're gonna end up dead. And Dalton is to, of course, like, seem like a guy that is almost like the Punisher with his kind of area setup, where in like the original Punisher movie, we had like Frank Castle, who puts like a gun underneath his like little table, or he has like a grenade by his toilet. And like, I was assuming like that's kind of how like this whole boat was going to be magically set up, but no. We have Dalton that goes on, and he just kicks this table, and the table hits Dell, and Dell goes down, and like their shots probably fired. Dalton gets close and rustles with the shotgun and gets it out of the guy's hand. And so we have Dalton that kind of chucks Dell off the boat. And so Dell is just kind of hanging on. And Dell's like, well, hey, are you gonna kill me with the shotgun? And Dalton's like, no, I don't have to kill you, but I don't have to save you either. I'm gonna pull the Batman Begins maneuver. Because we have Dalton that takes the shotgun, just chucks it in the water, and then all of a sudden we see the alligator coming from the water, and Dell's like, oh my god! Ah! So Dalton is trying to like just take this rope, but he's like, man, this is a really long bit of rope. I can't save Dell. It's really too hard. It's too difficult to save this guy. And all the while, we have this alligator that's just munching on freaking Dell, killing him. And it's like, oh man, if only we could have had this Dell guy for at least 4 to 5 more scenes, because he ends up just getting replaced with other goons that have to almost somewhat quasi look just like him anyways. Maybe he could have had a twin brother. Who knows? It could have been very much like the original Punisher film with John Travolta. So Dell is dead, and so Dalton again does the right thing, and he calls the cops, and like they're going on and they're taking pictures, and they're trying to scoop this guy out of the lake, even though they can't really find him because the alligators, they'll just eat everything. They'll just munch on this guy for weeks. So we have some guy who is the prior owner of said boat, who goes on and talks to Dalton about like, well, yeah, like an alligator that ate my poor Poopsie, my poor Snowball, my poor poodle dog thing, whatever I had before. And like, we have a good moment between these two guys for whatever goofy reason that goes on and like really just has Dalton really try to figure out like, Like, yeah, there's something really going on in this town, and I gotta get to the nitty gritty of it. So Dalton goes on and is to be forcibly met up with Ben by gunpoint, and Dalton is just like, no, like, I'm not meeting up with this guy. Like, he can go to the roadhouse and he can meet with me. Like, I'm not gonna go anywhere. Like, I don't care if you have a gun. Like, I don't care whatever you have. You can have a bomb and a nuclear bomb upon your waist, and I don't care. So this guy has a gun and he's putting it on Dalton. It's like, hey, if you do not come with me, I'm gonna shoot you. Like, he has it on his waist instead of out and like James Bonding it up. So Dalton goes and he just breaks the hand of this guy holding the gun, and he tells him that ahead of time. He's like, dude, I can just break your fingers and you can't shoot that gun unless you can do it on your other hand. So the guy, he takes out the gun, whips it out, because these guys have just run out of patience at this point. And yeah, he does what he does. He breaks his finger, and then the goons kind of sadly just whimper back to their boss. And Ben, of course, is getting a phone call from his dad. Because, of course, Ben is going on and ignoring this phone call from his father that, I guess, has his father in the shadows somewhere calling Conor McGregor's character, who is Knox. So Knox comes in all weirdly meme-like. I'm gonna come in here and just kill everybody, because that's what I do. Because, yeah, he comes in this scene and he's just probably banging on some woman. He's just having a good time, just banging on this woman, because he just walks out of this hostel whatever somewhere just bare naked, just walking around like this, and he's just walking through the town and he gets a phone call and he's like, yes, and it's of course the father. Is like, well, hey, like, what are you doing? He's like, clothes shopping. And so we have Knox that goes on to find this blazer, and he puts it on and it can cover his twig and potatoes and grapefruits. Yeah, all of that business. And so he's just kind of like walking around again like this, because that's how he walks through this entire movie. Every time he enters a room, he's like, yeah. I'm Irish. Anyway, that was a horrible comparison to Conor McGregor, but it's true. Like, he the whole movie he's like this. He's walk around. Maybe not as fat as me, but still. Anyways, so we have, of course, Dalton, and we have him at the bar. And certain times certain women are kind of jumping on top of the tables and they're dancing, and the bouncers are kind of like, hey, like, come back down. And in the original Patrick Swayze film, we have kind of the rich guy who comes into the bar and he brings his woman with him, who kind of just strips down and she's dancing, and Dalton is just like, excuse me, come on down. You're the next contestant on The Price is Wrong. So, like, we don't get the girl, like, taking off her clothes and dancing in this movie. We don't get that in this version. We just get Dalton going on and talking to Ben, and Ben is just like, well, hey, like, you didn't come and see me. And Dalton's just like, yeah, because I don't give a shit. Like, I don't care. Leave me alone. I just want to go on and just beat people up within the own luxury of my own environment. Like, stop coming to me with all this business about some YouTube video that you watched and how you're trying to intimidate me to leave this town. It's not going to work. It's just not going to happen. You messed with the wrong guy. You pushed the wrong man. So we have Ben coming in and like, well, hey, I just saw this YouTube video. You have to see it within my cell phone. You need to see this video. And so Ben shoves it in Dalton's face about the UFC fight that went horribly awry. And so Ben is like, well, yeah, I want you to leave this town. Like, and Dalton's just like, no, not going to do it. So then we get Knox to come in. And here's where things start to get really chaotic, if it wasn't quite chaotic enough. Knox comes in, and he brings a plethora of men with him, because he can't just come in there and walk like this and have just the goons behind him, and they just do a dance number. That's not going to work. So Knox comes in, and he creates some chaos with these men. And here's where Dalton starts to see his equal between the fighting and the UFCs and the mixed martial arts and the kung fu-ery. So we have Knox fighting against Dalton, and we kind of have, every time they're fighting against one another, we have these goofy one-liners where we have Knox telling Dalton, it's like, well, yeah, this is our octagon. And Dalton's like, when have you ever known to learn about shapes? And like all these quippy one-liners, and they're funny and they're goofy and they are what they are. Not all of them land, but probably 80% of them do. Because this is the classic action movie one-liner things that are just goofy and fun. So Dalton is fighting Knox, and we kind of get to where like Dalton has kind of really met his match here, and so he's kind of injured. He has this kind of thing in his eye, and he's kind of a little messed up. And when Knox is fighting Dalton is realizing, like, when he's punching him, it's like yeah, like you're crazy, like you're just taking these beatings, and like you're just keeping on coming. And Dalton's like, yeah. And so Knox is like, good, me too, and just pow, pow. So they're fighting all over the bar. They break a bunch of stuff that is like right behind the bar. Just chaos ensues. So after we kind of separate these two Goliath, these two behemoths, between this battle amongst men, muscular, good-looking, succulent men. I could have kept going there to just kind of make more jokes, but it just kept going. So we had Dalton, who ended up needing to get like stitched up before with the doctor after his first fight with all the five guys. And because his stitches reopened, and the doctor ends up giving him, like, slapping this bandage on his ribs and giving him like a bunch of antibiotics. This time around, Dalton even faces against his equal match of person, and then Dalton like doesn't have like any severe injuries. Like, all he needs to do is just take this washcloth and just wipe his face, and he's good. So Dalton goes on to just be like, okay, like, I am just gonna tear this town now. I'm just gonna tear this town to the ground, and I'm just gonna get even. So Dalton goes on to make his way back to the goons' lair, to the bad guys' lair, to Ben's slash Knox's lair. And Dalton goes on and just like punches people in the throat and kills them, kills all of them. And he's just stacking bodies in this truck, and Mo is just like, oh, well, like, I'm peacing out. Like, I don't want any, I don't know. Like I said hi to you in the bar before, while I was fighting with Knox, with Conor McGregor. But, like, you know what? Like, people are dying now, so I'm deuces. I'm outie. So, Dalton kills all of these men, murders them, just punch throating them. Maybe he Kali Ma like freaking rips all their throats out. He's like, ah, kind of like a MacGruber. Kali Ma was the Indiana Jones heart thing. That's not the same thing, but still. So Dalton ends up also taking this crooked sheriff deputy character, and he takes one of these bodies and he fires into it because the body is still cold, and the sheriff is there on the beach going like, hey, like, what am I doing here? Because Dalton knocks the guy out and then drags him along into this beach and kind of autopilots the boat to just kind of go far away from where they are. So Dalton is to go on and just be like, well, hopefully I can just kind of knock you out so you won't remember a lick of this and have short-term memory loss. And like he says, it's like, well, yeah, I'm a fighter, so I should be able to know how to do this. Sure you will. Just kind of like Mick Foley had gone on to do a story where he was fighting Tommy Dreamer, and Mick Foley was talking about this story about how you can kind of punch somebody a certain way and they will like instantly bleed. And Mick is fighting Tommy Dreamer and he's trying to punch this guy, and it's like, dude, I'm not getting it right. I'm not. And so it just gets to the point to where Tommy Dreamer turns to Mick Foley and he's like, stop punching me. It's like, you've tried too many times. It's not going to open. It's just not going to happen. I'm getting pretty woozy here now. Yeah. So Dalton hits a guy with the branch, with the tree. And so Dalton takes all this mass load of drug money. He's like, yeah, I have all this drug money now. Yeah, I'm going to get even with these guys. I'm going to, the Punisher way, kind of explode their boat full of money in some way or another. So Dalton has this money and he's hiding it from the bad guys. And so they're like, well, hey, we want this money back. And Dalton's like, oh, I don't have it. I don't know where it is. So Dalton goes on and he speaks with Big D. And Big D tells Dalton, it's like, well, hey, like, my daughter is kidnapped. And now, like, we have to work together for the both of us to free my daughter from these goons. And so Dalton is just like, okay, like, I'll go on and I'll steal your daughter's ex-boyfriend N's boat, and I will come to this yacht that Ben is on, and I will come for him. So Dalton goes all the way to this yacht because he absolutely knows where just Ben's yacht is. He has it on GPS. He's like, oh, it's right there. That's where the bad guys are. Kind of like in Last Action Hero. So that was the goofiest, weirdest thing about that part there. I just know where the villains are. I just know. So Dalton meets up, and even Big D is just kind of lounging, and he's just like, yeah, have a good time. Just, hey, let's have some mojitos. Yeah. So Dalton is just like, well, hey, like, Big D, like, it seems like you're just really, like, relaxed and luxurious and whatever. Like, shouldn't you be worried about your daughter? Like, that she could be dead in any minute from now if I don't have the money? because Dalton comes with this boat and he's like, I still don't have the money. And the guys are just like, well, like, where is it? Like, I'm going to have to kind of look you up and down and, and figure out where this money is. I will. Well, Dalton has already come up with a plan with some kind of, excuse me, with some kind of explosives. So, which I was like, okay, what were the explosives for? But then we figure it out. And I was like, yeah, great. So, Dalton is talking to Big D, Ben, and the cast of Good Times. And so we come to find out that Ben has actually double crossed Big D, and even Dalton is just like, ooh, double cross. As if he's one of the audience members and he's eating the popcorn and he's just like, what's going to happen now? So we find out that Ben wasn't going to tell Big D that he legitimately did kidnap his daughter, because Big D is thinking like, oh, my daughter isn't kidnapped. We just said that so that way we can lure you here so we can kill you ourselves. So Ben turns to Big D, is like, well, I did kidnap your daughter. This was a simple kidnapping, and it was great. So I just saw Bryan Cranston on Howie Mandel Does Stuff, and there's a goofy trailer of a thing where he mentions like, it was just a simple kidnapping. Sure it was. So the double cross happens, and so Dalton realizes, like, well, okay, I guess I have Big D as an ally now instead of an enemy. Again. So we now have Dalton, and he's talking to these guys, and he's just like, well, I'm not going to give you the money. Like, it's not going to happen. And Ben is going on and talking about his dad and how important that money is, and a lot of just yada yada. So the boat of which that Dalton has with him goes off. It explodes because Dalton tells the guys like, well, yeah, like the only guy that's gonna get really ticked off right now is Ellie's ex-boyfriend. And so Dalton hits this button, nothing goes off. He's like, So he gets close to the boat, hits the button, and then the bombardier, the big explodey thing, it goes off. And then like, whoa, and so we have supposedly like ringing in Jake's ears. He's kind of like he's had a couple. And so, and like, I guess like we're kind of seeing this through Jake's eyes of kind of what he's dealing with here, how he's drunk and how like everything's kind of white and he can't really see anything and he's ringing in the ears. And so Dalton is kind of going through this boat and he's like, whoa, like I don't know what I'm doing. What's going on? And Ellie, of course, is realizing that the boat is starting to sink, as well as Dalton making his way through this boat is starting to realize that it's sinking as well. Ellie goes on and she's breaking this glass, and I'm like, man, this boat glass is just really chintzy, but okay, whatever for story purposes, right? So she's breaking this glass down, and like Dalton opens this door and sees Ellie. He's like, hey, like we could just get out of this door. Exit right there. But Ellie is just too busy breaking this glass that as soon as there seems to be another goon coming, they're like, well, we have to just go through this window, right? To just get out of this boat. So we both have Ellie and we have Dalton, and we come to find that Knox has gone on to try to make his way to this boat also. And here is how we get our characters away from this whole situation. Where we come to find that, like, I think Ben has, like, this extra boat that he's on, and we also have Knox who's on his own boat. And so we have Ben that goes on to grab, I think, Ellie at this part of the movie, and I don't know how Big D gets away out of all this, but he gets away also. So we have Dalton that goes to find that's like, well, the only boat available is Knox's boat, so I gotta figure out a way of getting another piece of that guy so I can just start punching and beating him up some more. So here's where we get the weird octagon joke where like Dalton is just like, well, you don't know shapes. So we have this anchor, and so we're kind of like having these characters kind of really mess around with this anchor and kind of fight with this anchor or kind of hold on to it and be dragged by this boat. It's a lot of that going into this sequence here. Dalton and Knox punching and fighting it out, kicking and screaming and giggling. So we have Knox that ends up getting kicked off the boat. And so now Dalton is trying to get to his girl, trying to get to his woman. And so now Knox is to kind of be climbing on this ladder of this bridge. And he ends up finding like the first car that he sees, and he's like, oh, stop. So he can go on to get to the roadhouse. Because that seems to be where everybody's going on to. Everybody's making their way to the roadhouse. We have Ben's boat that kind of like crash lands his way into the roadhouse, or crash lands to get in close to the roadhouse, because we got to wreak more havoc in this roadhouse bar. So we also had that really funny moment where McGregor goes into the student driver car, this tiny little car, and he's driving around in it, and he ends up crashing it into a tree. That was kind of funny. So as like he's making his way to the evil lair, moving on. So all this is to just get to us having this big fight out between both Knox and Dalton. Like, we don't even have like Dalton really fighting it out with Ben's character, kind of like the original was, because we have to realize that like Ben's character is kind of just this rich guy, like, who really doesn't have like any kind of skill compared to possibly like the first Patrick Swayze villain, who is just kind of like this manly man, and he slaps his woman, who is kind of training for yoga or something. She has this big bruise on her face, and Dalton just sees this girl, and he's just like, okay, like, wow, like I'm really gonna enjoy taking down this guy by the end of the film. So, but Jake never even gets to, Gyllenhaal never even gets to do that by the end of the film. We really just have Knox who takes care of Ben himself. He just snaps his neck, just like, and kills him. And I'm like, dude, like, Dalton could have had the sheer satisfaction of like leaving that guy until the end and killing him. That would have been pretty sweet, but no. Like in the original Patrick Swayze film, we have like the people of the town all with like shotguns, and they're coming in and they're just firing into the villain, and it's like, yeah, like the people are getting back their town by defending it themselves. And that was a sweet ending of the original Patrick Swayze film. But in this film, we don't get that ending, which kind of sucks. It really just does. So, not to spoil the other Patrick Swayze film for those of you who didn't go on and see it, but I've been comparing a lot of the Patrick Swayze film and this one. So, regardless, you should go on and you should just see both, because they're pretty freaking sweet either way. So, Dalton and Knox are fighting, and like, I love how this just doesn't come down to let me turn my phone off for a second here. this doesn't come down to them just punching and kicking each other to death. Like, to me, I was hoping like there was going to be some furniture involved. Like, we have Knox who comes crashing into the roadhouse with this truck, and that's where we kind of like meet these characters. And so when Knox is trying to get out of the truck, out of one of the the doors, we have Dalton who's like holding him back. It's like, no. And so Knox is just like, well, hey, I see a window here. Pa! And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, are really like door windows that flimsy? Like, if you watch like the very first Terminator movie, you see Arnold like punching his fist through the windshield, and they're like, well, no mortal man can do that. Like, it's not just so easy to just break through a door. Like, I'm sure that was probably sugar glass. Like Maven Hoffman goes on and shows us one of his videos about how he went breaking through some glass and how it ends up being sugar glass. I've seen too many interviews and too many YouTube things. So, but check out Maven Hoffman. He's really cool. So, I think that's his name, Maven, the WWE's Maven, the guy from Tough Enough. So we have Knox punch through the glass, and again, I'm thinking of Terminator. So that's how we kind of get these two guys kind of fighting it out. We even almost think that Dalton is going to lose this fight by Connor like stabbing him with this piece of wood. It's like, yeah, like a piece of wood is just more worse than just a normal knife, a normal kitchen knife, because everybody goes on and sees these slasher horror films and you see with the kitchen knife. So like, we can't just use a normal knife. We got to go on and get this like wood piece and just stab. So we're thinking that Dalton is like down and out here. We're thinking like, oh, here's where the hero dies and here's where the villains prosper, and what a crappy ending, right? Because any traditional action movie would go on and tell you that the hero always wins at the end, except for possibly a Avengers movie or two. Or one. So Dalton goes on and is just like, no, like, wrong bet. Man, I always have to bring up the Lionheart goofy ending where like the much bigger guy is fighting Jean-Claude, and Jean-Claude's like, wrong bet, and then he goes and just beats up the bigger guy where he just kind of like hits him like this. It's weird. It is what it is. So Dalton ends up like just getting back up, and he too has his own kind of wooden knife as they're kind of dancing around with these wooden knives. And so it gets where Jake or Dalton is to have this one wooden knife and then takes the other wooden knife from out of his own body and just starts stabbing into Conor McGregor as if he's playing drums on his bate. Just stabbing away. And so here's where we have to naturally assume that Knox is going to get killed here. And I'm like, wouldn't it just be like Knox to possibly be like, oh no, that's not good enough. I didn't get stabbed good enough. Like, I'm just going to keep on going and keep on. And then like they have to figure out some other goofy way to kill this character off. But yeah, so, and like I said, just Ben just comes in, and Ben is just consistently ticked off because like, God, why can't I kill this guy? What do I gotta do? And Knox comes in and he's just like, shut up, man. Like, you're done. Like, stop moaning and groaning. Like, I'll tell your dad that I killed Dalton for you. So Dalton has now killed Knox and anybody else in his way. So Hero wins, and we have Ellie, and she kind of plays the normal traditional like oh, like you won, hug it out and all that jazz. And Big D comes in, and he goes on and he of course tells Dalton, it's like, well, hey, like, I'll take care of this, like, you leave, and don't say that you were ever here. So Dalton leaves, and at this point, like, he really leaves. Like, he's gonna go on and ride off into the sunset. He's talking to Charlie, and Charlie's just like, well, yeah, like, you're gonna play that classic Run Off to the Sunset, because of course, like, Charlie at the beginning of this film is besides giving her the tree book, of which where uh Jake is at the dinner with Ellie talking about the tree book with her, and then is to have this other book in her hand about this Western story. So Charlie goes on and is to tell Jake, it's like, oh, you're gonna legit like run off in the sunset, right? Because Charlie at this point has kind of lost everything. Even her father doesn't really have time for her. So Charlie goes into the now burnt down bookstore, because I completely forgot about that part of the film, where to send a message to Dalton, like they go on to burn the bookstore, kind of like in the hardware store where they burn down the hardware store in the other Patrick Swayze film, to really send this message home. And also in the other Patrick Swayze film, we have, I think, them also burn down the farm, and Patrick Swayze runs to save the old man, and like that's where things like start to escalate. But like with the whole boat scene, I think the whole boat scene was enough. Like they didn't need to go on and burn down this guy's boat, because Dalton had nothing in that boat to really give a crap about. Like, what was he going to care about? The alligator that was in the waters? He had nothing to tie himself to that boat. So, like, there was no investment there. So, we come to find out that Dalton had left a little something for for Charlie and her father, and it was the money from that whole drug thing. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is kind of like the ending of Punisher, where he leaves a note for all the people in the building, and he's like, sic this pocket parapellum, and if you want peace, ask for war and all this jazz. And so like though like so much of this movie feels like more like the Punisher to me. It's bizarre, but that Punisher movie was also like a Western also. So like so much about this has to be compared to even the Punisher movie as well as the Roadhouse film. So Jake drops off the money, and then he walks off without Charlie or her father knowing. But then the dad comes in. He's like, "Oh my god, there's a bunch of money here, huh?" And so he comes running off. And by that time, Dalton has gone on uh, to go on the bus, and he rides off into the sunset, and he leaves to possibly go on and uh, and help out some other bar, or bare knuckle box some other person or some town or whatever. Maybe meet up with Post Malone again, and they can have a buddy cop film. I don't know. Uh, buddy cop film. You know where I was kind of going with there. A buddy comedy movie. Who knows? So with that said, like, do you feel like there probably could be a Roadhouse 2 coming from this? Uh, like, I think if there was, like, I would go and see it, but I feel like this is going to be a one off movie, because I feel that, uh, oh my god, I just realized this. Please, no one give me crap in the comments. I think I just did a comparison between Jake Gyllenhaal and Colin Farrell. because I kind of mentioned some like Miami Vice stuff, and Colin Farrell was in Miami Vice, not Jake Gyllenhaal. My bad, but man, did it feel just like Miami Vice. Uh, Jake Gyllenhaal and Colin Farrell look a lot alike, right? No. But weirdly enough, we that's an Irish actor, Colin Farrell, and Conor McGregor is an honest Irish fighter, of course. Here's the goofy thing that I also saw in this movie. We had Conor McGregor, and there are certain times where he's not only walking around like this, but we also have to see like his tattoos that are, of course, displayed upon his body. And bizarrely, like I think his tattoo that is right here is just bizarrely like covered up with like dirt or something for some goofy reason. Like, was there some copyright or some goofy thing on his tattoo? And it seemed that also Conor McGregor had some other like weird other tattoo on his back. And I wasn't sure if that was legit his or not, or if they just put that in the film. Um, but of course you can kind of see like the Knox tattoo that is there on the poster thing. And I know he has McGregor on his chest, I think, and when he fights. But yeah, so I was kind of curious about the whole tattoo things because you can obviously see there's like dirt kind of just pushed into that tattoo to where you can't see it that much or see it that often. And I know Jason David Frank, the guy who played Tommy on Power Rangers, at some points, instead of like putting him in makeup for a number of hours, when eventually he got more tattoos upon his arms, they would just kind of put dirt and mud on it. I think especially in the Turbo Power Rangers film, and at some point he went on to like kind of talk about that, about how they just kind of put dirt over his arms. Uh, like man, that's gotta suck, right? But yeah, so with that said, I feel like that's all I wanted to mention. I'm sure there's going to be a plethora of different scenes that I forgot about, or there were certain things that I kind of had to reassess or re-put back in there, and that's just how I'm going to review. Like, instead of having to remember every single thing and every single little note, and I know somebody's going to come in here and like, you forgot about one little thing, and I'm going to be like, man, I don't really care. If anything, you know the grading of this, you know I enjoy this film. And so really that's the big important, the big takeaway. This was finally some new release movie that I actually did enjoy and thoroughly was like, I liked watching this all the way through. Yeah. Finally, something of new releases that I could bother to take uh almost an hour and a half of time to talk about, because a lot of these new releases clearly suck. Really, I could go on and just kind of list upon a video a number of new releases and just kind of give my quick opinions about it. But really, it won't be of a high quality. It won't be like me going through every scene and me breaking down everything. But I honestly don't think a lot of these new releases also deserve that. Like I couldn't have been bothered to have sat through Barbie all the way through. Like I got through a good chunk of it, but like I really didn't care. I really didn't exactly thought it was my cup of tea as far as story went. The Poor Things was just a movie about people effing, and it was kind of a Frankenstein like story, and like that just kind of sucked. Uh, there was a number of like Oscar nominated movies that I did see, and I really did not care for. Or wanted to just like, man, I seriously have to take X number of minutes to just dump on this film that obviously probably no one really probably cared about. No one was just like, oh my god, he hated this movie. How could he have hated this film? Because a lot of the newer releases just they sucked, and it's getting harder for me to go on and either find an older film um, that I could really go on and sink my teeth into and really enjoy. Even though, of course, there are some people that go on and be like, "Hey, man, you need to go on and you need to talk about this film," and I get it, like. But then there's also like me realizing that there's like no value in that film. Like I've already talked about this film. There's no value in this me talking about this. Um, but at some point, I want to get to it. I want to talk about it, and yeah, like me going on and me really wanting to almost become like a retro reviewer instead of me talking about the newer content, because a lot of it is just not worth my time. It's not worth uh me wanting to talk about it, because it's like, yeah, everybody's just gonna want me to come on and just bash every single thing, and I want to see something that's actually like, wow, like this was worth it. This was worth uh seeing. Because I feel a lot of people just think that I talk negatively about everything. Like this one, I couldn't like. There's little details that it's like, yeah, this kind of was annoying. Um, and so that's what I wanted to come on here and talk about. Really, for whatever reason, some people might have kind of just not liked that I didn't cut through scene for scene. I got the general gist of the movie, and I kind of did like my little funny jokes and whatever. So it is what it is. With that said, I'm gonna get out of here. I apologize for how long this took, this video, because I know it's a 2 hour film and I'm speaking for an hour and 40 minutes. Oh no. So with that said, I hope I'm gonna be able to see you guys sometime soon with another review, when that is. Hopefully there's another good movie that comes out. There's a possibility I might do another one for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. There's a possibility I might go on and do one for the Ryan Gosling Fall Stuntman movie, whatever that is, the Fall Guy or whatever that is. There's a possibility I might go on and do one for The Crow. I'm kind of spitballing whether or not uh, to do a review about Crow Salvation or the Crow series. But yeah, uh, really, I think the big thing right now is a lot of people are reviewing the X-Men 97. Like I watched a couple episodes of X-Men, not gonna lie. I think it's somewhere on the channel somewhere. Uh but I don't like I don't know if I want to like kind of go into X-Men 97 cuz I don't feel like I know everything about what happened by the end of X-Men, and I'm not going to try to make any illusion that I know all about the X-Men stuff, cuz eventually I think I watched a lot more of the kind of the later X-Men shows. But anyways, I'm talking for far too long. My apologies. Like it's been a while since I've done one of these again, cuz I really just am hurting the channel by just not going on here and talking more. But it's just I've also really been trying to go on and exercise a lot more and try to be healthy, and also getting to a point where I weigh like 229 right now, currently, the second of this recording, because I also just ate when I woke up, so who knows how much I weigh now. But yeah, so with that said, hopefully I can do another one of these, and at some point uh, probably do it better and different or whichever. But so that said, goodbye everybody. Goodbye everybody. If you watch this video all the way through, uh, if you guys want me to go on and just kind of do a video of me talking about all the newer releases and how I just kind of felt about them, because I had seen quite a bit of stuff that's kind of been uh, possibly out, like Evil Dead Rises or Super Mario Brothers, the movie, the newer one. A plethora of different shows and movies that I've kind of seen that I haven't got on here and just talked about. Shameless and Louder Milk and a plethora of other kind of content and things that probably may be of interest to people because I've kind of seen a kind of plethora of new releases and whatever. So kind of let me know if you guys want any of those kinds of videos and either having me to kind of quick talk about all of them or bash the crap out of a lot of these new releases because I'd be fine with doing that also. So with that said, goodbye everybody. Goodbye everybody.